Good evening. Thanks for joining us and welcome to the Hennepin South virtual open house meeting. Starting with introductions, I'm Becca Hughes with the City of Minneapolis Transportation Planning and Programming Division. I'm joined by Alan Klugman with the city's Traffic and Parking Services Division, Adam Hao with the city's Transportation Engineering and Design Division, as well as Jonette Kunau and Jessica Labs from Kimley Horn, the consultants on the project. In terms of project communications, virtual meetings will continue to be the way that we engage with you publicly for the foreseeable future. We do have an active project website and we do update that regularly. All of the information that we cover over the course of the open house presentations will be available for your review and comment on the project website through April 16th. We also have a project email, hennepin.south@minneapolismn.gov, where you can reach us with any questions, comments, or provide feedback at any time. Logistically this evening, we'll kick it off with a 30-minute presentation, followed by 30 minutes of Q&A. We'll open the chat box near the end of the presentation. Just type your questions in the chat box and we'll get to as many as we can this evening. Tonight, we'll start with a project schedule update. We'll give a brief recap on the project background. We'll move into design options and analysis and then conclude with how you can participate. In terms of project schedule, we are currently in the second of our 3 rounds of engagement as slated for the years of 2020 and 2021. We anticipate having another round of engagement in July of this year, followed by layout approval by the City Council in August of 2021. So later this summer, we anticipate having full layout approval for the corridor. The bigger adjustments that we've made to the project schedule and timeline is based on public feedback. Initially, we had slated 2022 as being a year that we would commence with utility construction. We've been able to shift that a year until 2023, and we've also been able to move the full street reconstruction project back from 2023 to 2024. We are evaluating currently the need for utility construction in 2023. Our end goal is to move utility construction into 2024 along with the full street reconstruction. So those are the timeline adjustments that have been made since our last open house in September. Beginning with a brief recap, this is a reconstruction of Hennepin Avenue from Douglas Avenue on the north to Lake Street on the south. It's about a 1.4-mile segment. Hennepin Avenue is the ward boundary between Ward 10 and Ward 7, with Ward 7 on the west and Ward 10 on the east. There are 3 neighborhood organizations that directly abut the corridor, 2 special service districts that serve the businesses along the corridor, as well as 1 business association. There are varied stakeholders, including commercial users, residents, and many others that currently use the corridor as a means of getting to and through the city. The Hennepin Avenue reconstruction project objectives begin with improving the sidewalk and intersection for all users. This includes installation of durable pavement markings at crosswalks and supporting the pedestrian activities along the corridor with space for plantings, landscaping, and furnishing zones where feasible. The recently adopted Transportation Action Plan identifies Hennepin Avenue on the pedestrian priority network. Evaluating bicycle network connectivity. The city's Transportation Action Plan identifies Hennepin Avenue between Franklin Avenue and Lake Street as a near-term, low-stress bikeway on the AAA network. Providing space for enhanced transit stops that are compatible with future Metro E-Line bus rapid transit service. The city's Transportation Action Plan also identifies Hennepin as a corridor on the Transit Priority Projects network. Replacing aging infrastructure, including traffic signals, sanitary, and storm, as well as maintaining and enhancing mobility and circulation for transit and motor vehicles along the corridor. In 2020, we had our first round of engagement via open house meetings in the month of September, with a public comment period that extended into October. We had a total of 120 individuals that attended the 2 open house events. In terms of the live meeting questions and comments, topically, bicycle facilities received nearly a quarter of the questions and comments during those meetings, with some in support and some against the implementation of bicycle facilities as part of the project. There was also questions regarding vehicular traffic at 16%. There were questions about maintaining and reducing the number of through lanes along the corridor. Pedestrian and business parking came up at 13%. There were questions and comments about improving pedestrian infrastructure and how we intended to do so. There were questions about whether we were going to be retaining curbside parking and loading as a part of the redesign of the corridor. There were other comments that came in regarding transit, our complete streets policy, as well as streetscapes, assessments, and construction-related questions. In addition to the 2 live open house events, we also had an interactive map that was available for public comment on the project website through October. In terms of the comments that we received nearly 770 comments. Just to highlight a few, pedestrian safety and access came out at nearly 41% of those total comments. Bicycle facility and access came in at 14%, with transit service at 13%. There were other various questions regarding parking, deliveries, streetscapes, and sidewalk cafes, as well as green infrastructure. There's more detailed summaries of past engagement efforts from 2018, as well as detailed information on the engagement efforts from fall of 2020 on the project website. The engagement in 2020 reinforces that there are a lot of competing priorities along the corridor and no consensus on how specifically the corridor should be designed. We also conducted a business survey in November through December of 2020. You can see in the map here the distribution in terms of who we heard from as part of that business survey. We received a total of 70 responses. And as you can see here, one of the big questions that we were asking them about in terms of their business operations was, where does loading and unloading occur as it relates to their business? As you can see, it's pretty much level in terms of the responses that we received, where on site and within the public right-of-way was between that 40 and 45% marker. Some other comments that we think are relevant as it relates to the findings that we received as part of that business survey is that really the majority of the businesses that responded had between 0 and 10 employees, that Friday through Saturday was really the busiest times for their business. Deliveries occurred on nearly every day of the week, and nearly 80% of the respondents within the survey said they cannot schedule their deliveries. I'm going to turn it over now to Alan Klugman to talk through some design options and analysis.
Thanks, Becca. In a few moments, we will go through 2 layout options in some detail. But before we do that, let's recap how we got to this stage of our layout development work. Those of you who attended the September open house know that we are strongly focused on meeting city policy goals through our design effort. Over the past few months, we have worked with these goals and have come up with findings on what it means to implement major city initiatives in this corridor. Let's review some of those key findings. First, we'll look at pedestrian space. A lot happens in the pedestrian zone, and we have determined that to fully meet our PED objectives, we desire to have 14 feet of pedestrian space on each side of the street. In a moment, I will illustrate that. Another key element is how we enhance transit, one of our prime objectives for this project. And we have concluded that to fully support transit, we will propose full-time transit lanes in each direction. I'll also have more on that in a minute. As we look at bike treatments in a corridor like this, we know that any bikeway would need to be a protected facility. In layout option 1 that you will see shortly, you will see a 2-way protected cycle track along Hennepin Avenue. Now, one of our themes in this project is that it is difficult to fit all of our desired modes and services within the available right-of-way. You will also see a layout tonight called option 2, where we do not provide a bike facility along Hennepin. For this option, we would look to provide a protected north-south bikeway nearby with strong connections to Hennepin. Also for bikes, there could be a hybrid option where we are able to fit in a bike facility for part of the corridor, and then for the rest of the length, we would provide a bike route nearby. I'll note that we will not be showing a layout of this tonight, but we are examining it. Switching to general auto traffic, we remain committed to providing mobility and circulation in this important commercial corridor. We are proposing fewer car lanes than today, but for safety and access, we will need left turn lanes at some key intersections. You'll see those turn lanes shown on the layouts. Moving to the last line on this chart, let's look at the curbside uses of parking and loading. We know that to support business activity along Hennepin Avenue, we must provide some level of parking and space for loading. It won't be as much as exists today, but there will be parking and loading along the corridor. Quickly reviewing some of what I just went over, let's look at this slide. When we talk about the pedestrian space, and you'll recall that I said we were aiming for 14 feet, a lot goes on in this zone. In addition to the walking space, it also includes the furnishing and amenity zone, space for planting, greening, and stormwater management, areas to accommodate bus stations and passenger loading, and even room for the mundane necessities such as signs and light poles. So we really want to keep our pedestrian space as large as we can. I also noted that we are recommending full-time bus lanes in both directions. That's something new, so let's talk about why we think this is so important. First, Hennepin is one of the key links in our overall citywide transit network, and its importance is only going to grow in the future when the E-Line Bus Rapid Transit, or BRT, arrives in a few years. We are committed to maintaining good travel speed and high reliability for the buses in this corridor. When you see the layouts for Hennepin, you will see that we are proposing a reduction in the total number of lanes for general vehicle traffic. That strongly matches our policy goals. Now, if we intermix buses in this new reduced section, that could provide further challenges for transit travel time. And as we study bus volumes and passenger counts along Hennepin, we see that the need for reliability extends throughout the day. Bus travel is not only a peak period occurrence. And one thing we know about bus rapid transit, both from the lines we now have in the Twin Cities and from other examples nationwide, is that BRT systems attract strong ridership all day. In fact, we forecast that daily bus passenger counts along this corridor will grow from 6,600 riders today to 14,000 with the new BRT system. And if you are wondering why we don't just replicate the part-time red bus lanes that are shared today with parking, I will note that dynamic bus lanes such as these do have operational challenges. As a quick build retrofit project, we were satisfied with the red bus lanes we installed on Hennepin in 2019. Now with a full reconstruction, we see the opportunity to expand on that success. In closing my remarks, I want to quickly summarize all of these points with a graphic that will set the stage for Jonette to present the layouts. The icons and dimensions show the elements I just described and illustrate the challenge of trying to meet our policy goals and fit multiple modes of services into the 88-foot right-of-way that we have available. In addition to the main modes of travel that would extend in a continuous manner from Lake Street to Franklin Avenue, please look at the red box on the right. These elements, such as greening and stormwater management, parking and loading, or left turns at key intersections, these elements may not occur throughout every foot of the corridor, but they do want to exist at key locations, and that represents space we need to account for. Similarly, for much of the corridor, we are looking to install a center median to enhance safety and maintain smooth traffic flow by prohibiting left turns across mid-block areas. That median takes up space also. Moving from a graphical representation like this to an actual layout design that we can build is our next step. And at this time, I will turn the floor over to Jonette, and she will describe the two leading design options that we have developed for this corridor.
If you participated in Open House number 2 in September, you might remember that we showed option 1 with one-way sidewalk level protected bikeways on each side of the street. As we laid out that typical section along the corridor and tried to fit in all the things that Alan mentioned, space for greening, parking and loading, left turn lanes at key locations, bus stop amenities, we found that we needed every foot available in the right-of-way. You can see that we tightened up the transit lanes by 1 foot on each side of the street and also changed the bikeway to be two-way on the east side of the street, which provided another 2 feet. When you take a look at the layouts, you will see that that additional 4 feet becomes very important on the layout with the bikeway. We put the bikeway on the east side of Hennepin Avenue because even with potential driveway consolidations or modifications, there were fewer driveway conflicts on that side of Hennepin Avenue and also better connections to the bike facilities on Franklin, 24th, 26th, and 28th. Based on the city's policy guidance and the technical analysis over the past few months, we have narrowed down the numerous potential cross-section options to two main design options. We have laid out those options onto the full corridor from Douglas Avenue to Lake Street to provide enough detail for you to see how that design would translate to each block in the corridor. These are still early in the design process, so there are some elements that will need refinement or further analysis going forward. However, the intent is to provide you with enough detail about each option so that you can provide meaningful comments as we work towards identifying a preferred option for the corridor. The Option 1 layout has a bikeway from Franklin Avenue to Lake Street and is similar to Option 1 that was shared in September. It has 8-foot through sidewalks on each side of the street, a two-way bikeway on the east side of Hennepin, 2 full-time transit lanes, and 2 vehicle lanes. It also has a median through much of the corridor, which I will talk more about in a few minutes. There is a legend on the drawings, but to quickly orient you, the sidewalk is shown in the lightest tan color. The boulevard and furnishing space and the median are shown in brown and green. The bikeway is shown in the darker gray color. The transit lanes are shown in red, and the vehicle lanes are shown in light gray. The layout also has bus stops identified. The E-Line BRT stations are shown in this snapshot in orange. One thing that I want to point out about the bikeway design, we are using a bend-out design at the intersections, which means that the bikeway alignment is pulled away from Hennepin Avenue by about 6 feet. This makes the pedestrian crossings as short as possible and allows us to have tight curb radii at the intersections, which slows vehicle turns. One of the benefits of switching to the two-way bikeway design is that it gives us enough space to achieve this bend-out bikeway design at all the intersections. Next, we have option 2, and the main difference here is that there is not a bikeway on Hennepin Avenue between Franklin Avenue and Lake Street. As a result, the option 2 layout has more boulevard and furnishing space compared to option 1. This has implications on the amount of space for elements such as greening in the corridor, sustainable stormwater features, and opportunities for parking and loading spaces on Hennepin Avenue. Here is a snapshot of the layout for option 2. As mentioned, this option has more opportunities for potential parking and loading on Hennepin. We have included these spaces in the layouts based on the activity that we know happens in the corridor today and is needed to support the numerous residences and businesses. We know from experience on Hennepin as well as other corridors that if there isn't space provided for these activities, then people will stop in the transit lanes instead. If a bikeway is not provided on Hennepin Avenue, then the city would look to improve the bicycle facilities on another parallel corridor, such as Bryant Avenue, with improved east-west connections between that corridor and Hennepin. The selection of an alternate bikeway route would consider the relative benefits to people biking, as well as the costs and impacts on those streets. The impacts would include on-street parking and vehicle circulation. As part of this round of engagement, we are showing one layout with a bikeway on Hennepin Avenue between Franklin Avenue and Lake Street, and one layout without a bikeway. There are multiple hybrid variations that could have a bikeway on a portion of the Hennepin Avenue corridor. Some of those hybrid variations were shared in the previous round of engagement, and those variations are still on the table as possibilities. Next, I want to highlight a couple design elements on the layouts and the differences between the two design options. The project team has been coordinating with Metro Transit on the placement of bus stops on the corridor. Based on this coordination, both layouts show E-Line BRT stations at Franklin Avenue, 25th Street, and Uptown Transit Station. Those stations will serve both the E-Line and local bus routes. There are also several local bus stops proposed on the corridor at Lincoln Avenue, 24th Street, 27th Street, Lagoon Avenue, and Lake Street. On the option 1 layout with the bikeway, the northbound local bus stop at 24th Street did not fit within the existing right-of-way on Hennepin Avenue, and the northbound bus stop was relocated to 24th Street at DuPont Avenue for the option 1 layout only. Both layouts show left turn lanes at key locations in the corridor. Based on existing traffic patterns and to provide opportunities for left turns every few blocks in the corridor, left turn lanes were recommended at 22nd Street, 25th Street, 28th Street, Lagoon Avenue, and Lake Street, which is what you will see for the layout for option 2 without the bikeway. On option 1, the left turn lanes did not fit within the right-of-way at 25th Street, where there are also BRT stations. As a result, in the option 1 layout, the left turn lanes were relocated from 25th Street to be at 24th Street and 26th Street instead. Where left turn lanes are not provided, left turn movements would be restricted during some period of the day. Almost all these intersections currently have left turn restrictions during peak periods, such as 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. With one vehicle lane in each direction, those left turn restrictions would need to extend over a larger portion of the day, for example, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The exact hours of the restrictions still need to be determined. On the layouts, you will see a table near the bottom that summarizes the existing left turn lane locations, the existing left turn restrictions, and the potential left turn restrictions for each design option. Medians are shown for most of the corridor on both layouts. These are being proposed to improve both safety and operations. Vehicle turns into driveways, especially left turns, create conflicts with pedestrians on the sidewalk as well as people on bicycles. By making all movements into the driveways to right turns, drivers don't have to find a gap in oncoming traffic to make the left turn. The medians also make the one vehicle lane in each direction work more efficiently. If mid-block left turns were allowed, they would have safety issues as mentioned, but also result in vehicles backing up or more likely bypassing the left turning vehicle using the transit lane. The project team is currently discussing modifications to driveways with property owners. The modifications include narrowing some driveways, consolidating the number of driveways where there are multiple access points to one property or to adjacent properties, and closing driveways that are either unused or through redevelopments that are occurring. The locations that we are currently talking to property owners about are shown on the layout with an asterisk. All of these changes reduce conflicts and improve the space for people walking and biking while maintaining access to properties and smooth traffic flow. Finally, there are some design elements that we want to acknowledge that either aren't on the layout yet or need additional refinement and detailed design work. These are elements that are important to the layouts and will continue to be explored as the design process moves forward. We will have more detailed information about these elements later in 2021 as a preferred alternative is identified and as additional design details are developed. At this point, we will wrap up the presentation, and in just a moment, we will transition to Q&A so we can answer your questions. First, I want to touch on the information that is posted for you on the project website and the various ways that you can participate and provide input to the project. All the project materials and links to provide input are posted on the project website, minneapolismn.gov/projects/Hennepin South. There you can view the full corridor layouts and look at specific areas in more detail than what we were able to cover in this presentation. A video of this presentation is posted to the website so that everyone has a chance to view it, even if they were not able to attend one of the live meetings. A link is posted to an interactive map that has simplified versions of the layouts so that you can provide comments directly on the layout for each design option. There is a link to a comment form where you can also provide us with open-ended comments or comments that aren't specifically related to one of the layouts. Finally, there is an email link to contact the project team directly with any specific questions. If you are participating in one of the live meetings and want to ask a question now, please use the Ask a Question button and we will answer as many questions as time allows. After the live meetings, we will post all the questions and answers, even those we did not have time to answer. And as I mentioned, you can also contact the project team directly with your questions. Now I will turn it over to Jessica to moderate the Q&A portion of the live meeting.